Oh, okay. All right. Okay, very good. Okay. Okay. All right. Let's slide just a little to our right. I'll just. A little bit more. Okay. Okay, well, we understand that they have asked the crane to move forward and be in a standby position. The OIC for the technical rescue, the OIC stands for Officer in Charge, has just arrived on the scene for the technical rescue group. They have made some assessments we expected that they would, and they are talking now with construction workers. You see them assembled on the far side, that would be the east side of this construction accident scene right now, talking with them. What they're doing is they're getting a head count of the number of people, workers that were involved, so they have an idea of who's accounted for and who's not. They've also just recently told all the firefighters that responded, the first responders, that they have to have their breathing apparatus on in the hot zone. That's an area that's designated by the commander for the fire department, who's here on the scene, just for safety purposes. But there is still some concern about the structure itself, as far as the tentativeness of whether or not there's going to be any more collapse. So they're taking it very cautiously. In the time from when we spoke to you last, I believe they put up a tarp, as you indicated, over here on the right-hand side of the screen, right there, over a vehicle that was in the eastbound traffic lanes. The entire front half of that vehicle was crushed underneath the concrete there. Several people are reported deceased on the scene. One piece of good news, they did send a fire rescue vehicle over to the right-hand side of the screen here, to that parking garage that we alluded to a little earlier. You see the corner of it there in your screen. A person showed up there with some minor injuries. He was near the bridge. He ran away from it and ran underneath the parking garage and was too frightened to come back out and stayed there. So they're sending somebody over, but they called it a self-extrication, which means that he was either under the rubble or in a vehicle under the rubble, was able to get himself out. So that's some good news there. I'm sure he'll have a story to tell, Len. Hey, Joe. Can we maintain our distance but go south and go? Yeah, okay. Let's just try to change our angle a little bit, see what we can see. I don't know if those buildings are going to get in the way or not. Okay. Okay, right in there. Let's slide just a little bit back to the left there, just a touch. I want those guys right in the center are the ones I want to focus on. There you go. Okay. All right. All right. We're going to lose it here. But do what you got to do. No. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I'm sure. No worries, we're fine. Yeah, it carries 585 people. I mean, yeah. Yeah, put the pole on the right side of it, we'll be good. Well, that technical rescue team you made reference to, Jeff, they are here on the scene. They do have set up a command post. The cluster of firefighters that you can make out there right in the center of the screen, including the guy with the yellow flak jacket on there on the right-hand side. They have a device. It's called a Polaris. It's a search and rescue device that they can send in. They're going to be conducting listening operations, as we indicated a little bit earlier. We jumped the gun on reporting that because they had not arrived yet. The devices had not yet arrived on the scene. They are here now, and they are going to be using them. They have indications that there may be somebody underneath that center section of rubble right there, and that's where they made the determination that they want to start to do their searching. So they'll be doing that in the next 15 or 20 minutes here. They'll be asking for total silence from everybody around in the area. That'll go out over a PA system, and you'll be able to hear a pin drop right out there, because all the air traffic and everybody else is going to be out of the area, as we are some 2.5 miles away now, as we continue to monitor this situation that has left several people dead, at least 4 people taken to Kendall Regional Medical Center, one of them a trauma alert with major injuries. Reports of one person who was able to escape and extricate themselves and ended up in the parking garage at the FIU campus right there at the base of this concrete pedestrian walkway that came down, treated by fire rescue on the scene for some bumps and bruises right now. On the scene, will not be transported at this time. So a fluid situation here as they continue to assess the damage that was done here. There was this big crane that was here on the scene that was being used for some construction work. They did bring it in and move it closer to the scene with the idea that at some point they may need to be to either secure some of the concrete loads while the firefighters work underneath, or to remove some of that concrete so they can access some of the vehicles that are trapped underneath there, possibly with people and drivers inside. I wonder if this is the same company that built that parking garage. To take pictures of it? Right. Right. $345? 340 to 345. No, that's not going to be happening for a while. What they're doing is they're trying to assess the damage from a standpoint of initially, Lynn, it's always search and rescue. That's the term that they use, search and rescue, and then it becomes search and recovery after they've determined that they cannot render any aid to anybody that might be injured. At this point, they're still focusing on several small sections of what would be the westbound road there on Southwest 8th Street here at 109th Avenue, where this pedestrian bridge came down. They're focusing on that right now. They're using several listening devices that are provided by the technical rescue team there and a search and rescue team, trying to listen for any sounds of anybody that might be trapped underneath there. But the body language of them right now would be an indication that there's not much of development in the way of them finding or hearing anything at this point. They're going to continue to do that. They do that for about 15 or 20 minutes. They, as I mentioned to Jeff, they'll ask for silence out there on a PA microphone, get everybody to just be very quiet for a few minutes as they listen. They also have one of their assets are canines that are trained for this urban rescue type thing when you have a building collapse or a structural collapse. I have not received any word that they are going to be brought out here, but that is an asset they may be considering. Again, this structure came down on top of a number of vehicles here. There were some folks that were able to extricate themselves and get out. Samaritans, along with fire rescue and police personnel that were first responders out here, treated a number of people. We know that at least 4 or 5 people were taken to Kendall Regional Medical Center. One of them was at least one of them was a trauma alert victim with some severe injuries. We know that at least one person originally was reported deceased on the scene. Now we're getting indications that there may be several in these vehicles that were trapped underneath this when this structure that is probably maybe 25 to 30 feet at its highest point came down. 2 layers of concrete pancaked together and then down onto the ground there on top of those vehicles. And you gave a number for how many tons it is, but obviously a massive structure and a massive collapse out here, Lynn. Wow. Yeah. That's something that will happen down the road. But what happens right now is that all they're trying to do is communicate with anybody, or to ascertain if there's anybody in any of those vehicles that's underneath there, and find out if there's a life-saving need. That's the primary focus right now. If it involves moving concrete, or if it involves moving any of the structure, lifting any of it, that will come in time. But right now, it's obviously the assessment is there anybody left underneath there that is still alive? So that's the number one consideration. That's what they're doing right now. Once they make that consideration, if they do establish contact, I'm sure we'll see quite a scurry of activity, but that's not happening right now. What we're seeing is those, especially right in the dead center of the screen, right there, just below that the base of that red crane. You can see there are firefighters there. There's one that appears to be doing some manual labor there, either pumping up some kind of a device. Of course, our distance now does not enable us to give you any tighter picture here. We're several miles away after consideration was given to the fact that they needed silence up there, as we said earlier, so they could hear any cries for help, or any noises, or any sounds emanating from underneath that big pile of debris. What's that? Okay. No, we can't speak to that at this time, but we do understand that they did a head count and they have accounted for all of the construction workers that were on in the area. They've spoken to the what they do is they assembled them all. You can see them upper left-hand corner of the screen there in the orange shirts. That's the majority of the construction crew arriving on the scene in the past 5 minutes or so. Of unsafe structures representatives, those are folks that work for the county, along with some of the building department folks that responded out here. They've been right in the center of the screen, all those blue shirts that you see right there, and then also a smaller crane. I don't know if you can make it out there, but it's right dead center in the middle of the screen. It appears to be a white door on the back of it. That's the one of the control modules there for that crane. It pulled in off the, came down the roadway here from the west side, traveling east, and is now pulled up right to the west side of the collapse there. It's a lifting crane, and our understanding is that it's being brought in just to be in a standby position in case they need to access its capabilities there and lifting some of that concrete out of the way. Again, Miami-Dade Fire Rescue technical rescue team here on the scene. They have set up their command post. They have deployed several of their listening devices and are in the process of going from one side of the accident to the other. They've already had several firefighters scramble underneath to get a quick look underneath. Again, trying to render aid if it's necessary. As we indicated earlier, what they want to do is they want to assess the situation to the degree of, is there anybody else trapped underneath there, and what is that person's condition? Is the person still alive? Is there a rescue necessary, or is this going to become a recovery process? At least 6 vehicles trapped underneath it. This span that goes across Southwest 8th Street here at 109th Avenue came crashing down two tiers of it. The walkway itself and then the structure that's above it came down, pancaked on top of a number of vehicles that were traveling in the area there. Some folks, again, were able to scramble out of their vehicles. Miraculously, saw, at least in some of our video, we saw a couple of cars where the concrete came down on the hood but did not make egress into the cabin of the vehicle, so that the front windshield was still intact and the doors were open. It would appear that the people were able to get out. There were several people that were what the fire department called walking wounded with minor bumps and bruises and contusions. There were 4 people, actually now I'm getting word 5 people that were transported to Kendall Regional Medical Center with injuries, including 1 trauma alert. That's where they have life-threatening injuries or severe injuries. They notified the department there that that's where they were going to be taking that particular victim. And then, of course, early on, we heard that there was at least 1 person deceased in a vehicle that was clearly visible. We believe that's where the yellow tarp was set up over here on this side of the screen here in the eastbound lanes. And then now we were hearing later that there were several other fatalities in this. Of course, we're waiting to get more information. Fire Rescue did an assessment, spoke as we spoke earlier when we started about who was here and who was working and where they were, what their job was. They've done an accounting of that, and it appears that most of the construction workers have been accounted for. We also reported earlier that they found another victim who was able to self-extricate himself from the accident and ran as this thing came tumbling down into the parking garage over here on the right side of our screen here. It's going to be this building. I don't know how, there it is right there, part of it. I didn't want to go off too far, but that parking garage right there, and was treated. He's in good condition. So again, that's the latest as far as the information goes, is what is happening right now at this construction accident. Back to you. Right, and if you think of this, there are 8 lanes of traffic, 4 in each direction, plus you have 2 turn lanes there to the entrance to FIU. So that's 10 lanes of traffic that could have been involved with this when it came down. I would say that time of day probably played a big part of it, because we are not quite into the well, we're getting closer to the rush hour now, but it wasn't quite rush hour. Just park a little bit after midday traffic would still be heavy, but yes, it is amazing that as few cars as we've seen are underneath it. Now again, that's what we could see. That's what was visible to us from the air. Unknown how many other vehicles may be underneath there that we couldn't see because they were completely covered by this concrete structure that came down. So again, we'll get some numbers as they come in and obviously pass them along to you guys. Correct. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, as we said earlier, it looked like they were going to have it in position in case they needed to deploy it, and they've asked them now to put the boom of that device up, and you can see right now that they're getting it into position here. We still have firefighters on both sides of the structure here at 109th Avenue and Southwest 8th Street, listening, looking. We've seen firefighters get down on their hands and knees and crawl underneath a short way, leaving their legs exposed outside of the structure that's collapsed down here, looking and listening, still waiting. I believe right in the center of the screen is the officer in charge there, that guy in the yellow jacket, right in the dead center of the screen, up on top of the concrete right there. He's giving instructions to his men down there and women of exactly what their responsibilities are going to be. So again, we're monitoring. We have an active situation here where this structure came down, and when it came down, obviously a lot of damage to the structure itself, but also to the vehicles that were driving on this roadway. We're going to continue to monitor, and as any little piece of information that we get, of course, we're going to pass it back along to you.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, shit.
You're up on standby. Hear anything?
No, but I like this line. After staying mum, the president has now spoken out. I'm stealing that. Whose line is that? Yeah, I can hear you.
Serena's. You can steal it.
Serena, can I steal your line? After staying mum, the president has now spoken out.
Go for it.
It's a good line.
All you.
Hi, good. I can hear you. No, they didn't, and I wrapped like right at 3:30. So thank you. I really appreciate you being willing to bump back. Yeah, we weren't sure, so they kept delaying it, and we were like, if they're just going to cancel it, just tell us, because we all just sit there waiting. No. Oh, she said that the United States does have a trade deficit with Canada, which I don't know. It was just that. She just doubled down on alternative facts. I don't know what else to say about that, except that that's nutso. With the hack check stuff? It's possible. Oh, I mean, I think that they are, I don't know, getting in trouble. It's hard to imagine anyone that close to the president sort of being reprimanded, but she could politely be shown the door. And right now, they just are hypersensitive that they have to start cracking down. Yeah.
The White House continues to insist that the Canadian response was to cite our own U.S. trade website.
Absolutely. He's definitely getting closer to his business ties, his organization, all of his work outside of politics. And in the past, the president has said that any bit of this investigation that starts penetrating into his or his family's financials might be a red line for him. Absolutely. So in some ways, it's them acting upon the indictment that came out a month ago. And I think Republicans on Capitol Hill, Democrats for that matter, are sort of breathing a sigh of relief today. Finally, this president and this White House is acting on what has clearly been the recommendation from lawmakers and his own Justice Department, that there needed to be consequences and blowback against Russia in response to their meddling in our elections. I think he will, and he surely will want to. I don't know any president that doesn't want to get out there and fight for his colleagues. But I think that there are going to be plenty of Republicans now that second guess whether that is a good idea. Whether or not the Democrat ends up sort of securing this victory, it's very possible it goes into a recount. It was, regardless, a huge symbolic victory for the Democratic Party, because essentially they made up a 20-point swing from 2016. So I can imagine there will be plenty of Republicans really worried when they look at a candidate who ran very close to the president and lost so in such sort of resounding fashion. You're exactly right. This is a huge issue. It was an election that really had ramifications for both parties, because we saw the Democrat run as a rather moderate conservative Democrat. He didn't sort of take the bait and call for new big sweeping gun control measures, for instance, even though sort of the timing of the election would have suggested he might. He really distanced himself from Leader Pelosi, would-be Speaker Pelosi, if Democrats were to take the House. He was very cautious and said he's not sure that he would support her at all for that role. And so I think that in some ways he maybe provided a mold for how Democrats might be able to win in some redder districts. Can they win in Trump country if they play it calm and distance themselves from Democrats here in D.C.? But in other ways, it's hard for the Democratic Party to figure out how to advise their candidates across the board, because it's pretty hard to tell people it's all right, you don't have to support our party leadership. Right. So I don't think that would be as much of a surprise. And at this point, everyone seems to be just waiting for the next shoe to drop. There's a feeling around here in town that it's just a matter of time that the president is in sort of a firing spree. But I think that when we have to take the president's words at face value on some of this, he was asked directly today in the Oval Office if he planned on making any other high-level staff changes, and he said no. You know, there are a lot of rumors flying around. So far, we have an attorney general in place. So I do think that we will have to be cautious and careful. Though Jeff Sessions in that role has been controversial from the start, the president has not gone to great lengths to be quiet about his displeasure in Jeff Sessions, very publicly tweeting and talking about his frustrations with his own attorney general. We've talked about how bizarre that is. So it is not surprising that they might be vetting other folks and really looking at who they might replace him with. Thank you. Thanks, you too.
Living, and The bridge at FIU just collapsed out of nowhere. There's cars stuck under there.
The bridge was installed less than a week ago to increase safety to a busy part of the Florida International University campus, where officials say heavy traffic's been a problem for a long time.
It felt as if there was an earthquake, so me and my roommate jumped up and looked outside. And as soon as I looked outside, I saw dust flying everywhere, and I knew that the bridge had collapsed.
The bridge was intended to improve pedestrian access across Tamiami Trail from FIU's main campus to Miami's Sweetwater section, where thousands of students live in off-campus housing or in the school's newer dorm. Florida International University is one of the largest universities in the country, and because of the growing enrollment, has been sprawling across southwest Miami-Dade County for the last 2 decades. 8th Street, where the bridge collapsed, is a major thoroughfare that runs from downtown all the way to the Everglades. The Florida Highway Patrol says at least 5 or 6 vehicles were crushed when the bridge collapsed. Zachary Quiche, ABC News, New York. Bridge collapsed. Zachary Quiche, ABC News, New York.
And the bridge at FIU just collapsed out of nowhere. There's cars stuck under there.
The bridge was installed less than a week ago to increase safety to a busy part of the Florida International University campus, where officials say heavy traffic's been a problem for a long time.
It felt as if there was an earthquake, so me and my roommate jumped up and looked outside. And as soon as I looked outside, I saw dust flying everywhere, and I knew that the bridge had collapsed.
The bridge was intended to improve pedestrian access across Tamiami Trail from FIU's main campus to Miami's Sweetwater section, where thousands of students live in off-campus housing or in the school's newer dorm. Florida International University is one of the largest universities in the country, and because of the growing enrollment, has been sprawling across southwest Miami-Dade County for the last 2 decades. 8th Street, where the bridge collapsed, is a major thoroughfare that runs from downtown all the way to the Everglades. The Florida Highway Patrol says at least 5 or 6 vehicles were crushed when the bridge collapsed. Zachary Quiche, ABC News, New York.
And the bridge at FIU just collapsed out of nowhere. There's cars stuck under there.
The bridge was installed less than a week ago to increase safety to a busy part of the Florida International University campus, where officials say heavy traffic's been a problem for a long time.
It felt as if there was an earthquake, so me and my roommate jumped up and looked outside. And as soon as I looked outside, I saw dust flying everywhere, and I knew that the bridge had collapsed.
The bridge was intended to improve pedestrian access across Tamiami Trail from FIU's main campus to Miami's Sweetwater section, where thousands of students live in off-campus housing or in the school's newer dorm. Florida International University is one of the largest universities in the country, and because of the growing enrollment, has been sprawling across southwest Miami-Dade. County.
And the bridge at FIU just collapsed out of nowhere. There's cars stuck under there.
The bridge was installed less than a week ago to increase safety to a busy part of the Florida International University campus, where officials say heavy traffic's been a problem for a long time.
It felt as if there was an earthquake, so me and my roommate jumped up and looked outside. And as soon as I looked outside, I saw dust flying everywhere, and I knew that the bridge had collapsed.
The bridge was intended to improve pedestrian access across Tamiami Trail from FIU's main campus to Miami's Sweetwater section, where thousands of students live in off-campus housing or in the school's newer dorm. Florida International University is one of the largest universities in the country, and because of the growing enrollment, has been sprawling across southwest Miami-Dade County for the last 2 decades. 8th Street, where the bridge collapsed, is a major thoroughfare that runs from downtown all the way to the Everglades. The Florida Highway Patrol says at least 5 or 6 vehicles were crushed when the bridge collapsed. Zachary Keish, ABC News, New York.